Thank you so much, Chandana, for your kind words. So, the purpose of my talk this morning is to explore and analyze how globalization and cultural diversity are addressed in the Finnish national curriculum for comprehensive school. I focus on the findings of desk research that is supported by pertinent commentary based on ethics and globalization literature. Concerning the Finnish school system, it is relevant to know that the comprehensive school provides education in grades 1 to 9 for children aged 7 to 50 years. So, my study is particularly concerned with the ethical implications of the curriculum's perspectives on globalization and cultural diversity. In this case, ethical implications signifies how various ethical concepts, such as rights, duties, and consequences, interact with one another. Which concepts are most important and what kind of overall ethical view can be formed based on the curriculum. In order to examine this topic, I will focus on the following questions. What does the Finnish curriculum say about globalization and cultures? How and from what perspective are diverse cultures and multiculturalism portrayed in the Finnish school curriculum? What challenges and opportunities are associated with globalization? And finally, how and to what extent does the curriculum frame these challenges and opportunities in terms of ethical concepts such as rights, duties, and moral consequences? In what follows, I try to answer these questions by analyzing and critically evaluating the Finnish curriculum. Globalization is not explicitly defined or explained in the Finnish core curriculum. To set a stage for the analysis, let us consider the following as a working definition for globalization. Globalization refers to the processes by which the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, including knowledge and education, become increasingly uniform all over the world. Besides its economic orientation, globalization is often blamed for cultural homogenization and the watering down of local traditions. This is referred to as the westernization of culture and is frequently considered a potential source of cultural conflicts. Homogenization and the westernization of cultures are frequently viewed unfavorably. A critical perspective on globalization provides many opportunities for ethical evaluation of the topic. Insofar as a critical perspective focuses on the unequal economic benefits of globalization, the ethical orientation can be aligned with the discussion of universal human rights, such as the right to life, equality, and freedom from discrimination, while simultaneously including consequential ethical considerations with regard to social sustainability. Thus, different ethical models provide useful distinctions and tools for the analysis of a school curriculum. In what follows, I concentrate on the utilitarian and deontological frameworks. Despite the fact that the media frequently focuses on the economic effects of globalization, teachers and curriculum planners can be expected to take additional effects, such as social and cultural transformations, such as the rise of living standards, the widening of income gaps, and a range of inequality issues into account in order to provide pupils with a comprehensive understanding of what globalization entails. Perhaps also to prevent and mitigate possible culture-related conflicts among pupils. Thus, the discussion of globalization has obvious and important ethical dimensions, both at individual and at community level. From 2014 to 2017, Finland formed a national core curriculum at all levels of education. Early childhood, pre-primary, primary and lower secondary and upper secondary. As a result, the core curriculum now forms a more or less coherent progression throughout the entire education system. Without dwelling in the pedagogical theory debate, The current Finnish curriculum can be said to be based on socio-constructivist educational theory, despite the fact that the term is not mentioned in the curriculum. The term socio-constructivists refers to the recognition of cultural and contextual issues in learning situations, as opposed to generic and non-contextualized knowledge construction. It is anticipated that such recognition will help pupils develop in a way that is responsive to their local cultural environment, to unique local characteristics, and to societal shifts such as globalization and digitalization. Thus, socio-constructivism emphasizes the construction of knowledge based on pupils' prior knowledge and interaction with the changing social environment. In the introductory chapter, the Finnish core curriculum declares that its purpose is to support and guide the organization of teaching and schoolwork, as well as to encourage the uniform implementation of basic education. Although the core curriculum provides general guidelines at the national level, the curriculum is further expanded at the local level in municipalities. Eventually, the local curriculum is what establishes the authoritative basis for education and provides direction for daily schoolwork. However, it is still up to each teacher to decide how and to what extent they cover particular topics such as globalization and cultural diversity in class. Teachers at the individual level are thus the ultimate gatekeepers of curriculum. And curriculum is not the only thing that affects teachers. For example, teacher education, school principals, and the parents of the students all play a role. In what follows, I review and critically evaluate the Finnish core curriculum's approach to globalization at the general level. According to the curriculum, global education in comprehensive school contributes to the creation of conditions that are conducive to fair and sustainable development, in line with the United Nations Development Goals, SDGs. The curriculum states that this educational effort should be carried out to the greatest extent possible, in cooperation with educational institutions and developers in other countries. Thus, in addition to the primary national requirement for education, the Finnish core curriculum also recognizes the importance of an international perspective. The core curriculum holds that nationally and internationally, basic education is a positive society-building force for change. In this way, the Finnish school curriculum takes a broadly positive view of globalization as a process of internationalization and cooperation. It's worth noting that the curriculum links cultural diversity to the goal of community building. In this regard, the curriculum is optimistic about the ability of people from diverse backgrounds to effectively collaborate, which represents a constructive ideal of the coexistence of different cultures. The various components of globalization, including its economic, social and cultural aspects, are not problematized or debated in the curriculum. This is, in a way, understandable, given that the curriculum's purpose is to provide schools and teachers with clear and achievable learning objectives. Those in charge of developing the curriculum may believe that critically evaluating different aspects of globalization would cause teachers to be hesitant and confused about which path to take and how to present globalization to pupils. In light of this, the Finnish curriculum's streamlined approach to globalization is understandable, albeit restricted. The Finnish curriculum places the greatest emphasis on the cultural and socio-political aspects of globalization, which is demonstrated by the fact that the cultural diversity is a topic covered throughout the curriculum. This might be considered peculiar, given how frequently the economic consequences of globalization are discussed in the media. The economic aspect of globalization becomes most apparent when the curriculum discusses work and professions. The curriculum emphasizes how work and professions are changing as a result of technological advancement and economic globalization. As a result, the curriculum approaches globalization in a practical and utilitarian, perhaps even uncritical manner. Globalization is acknowledged as a social fact that is essentially irreversible, and school children are regarded as being in need of knowledge and skills to help them navigate the globalized world and labor market. However, in order to encourage more nuanced globalization teaching and help students learn more about globalization issues, school education must go beyond the economic dimension of globalization. In a sense, this appears to be the case with the Finnish curriculum, in which cultural diversity is viewed favorably. The Finnish curriculum considers cultural diversity a source of wealth and well-being. According to the curriculum, comprehensive education in Finland is built on a diverse cultural heritage that has been and continues to be shaped by the interaction of different cultures. This assertion can be interpreted in two ways, descriptively or normatively, stating a fact or proposing a norm. Despite Finland's long history of having relatively homogeneous cultural milieu, the curriculum emphasizes cultural exchange. There are obvious reasons for this. Over the last 50 years, an increasing number of immigrants with refugee, student or professional status from various countries and continents have moved to Finland. Some of these immigrants were repatriating Finnish natives who had moved to the neighboring Sweden several decades previously. Nonetheless, as a result of this overall increase in immigration, Finland has become more international than ever before. Despite its generally positive outlook on cultural diversity, the Finnish curriculum makes relatively few mentions of cultural interaction, such as spread of artistic influences or cultural currents. These mentions appear in the context of arts, music, needlework and handicraft education. The three major areas where the positive effects of school education are assumed to be fulfilled in relation to cultural diversity are pupils' cultural identity, their active participation in their culture and community, and interest in other cultures. Furthermore, the curriculum assumes that education can foster creativity and respect for cultural diversity, foster interaction within and between cultures, and lay the foundation for culturally sustainable development. As a result, the curriculum strongly supports the widely acknowledged goal of social and cultural sustainability, which refers to meeting basic human needs, such as social justice and human rights, while also ensuring the well-being of future generations. The Finnish curriculum points out that pupils from different cultural and language backgrounds meet each other in comprehensive education and come in contact with a wide variety of customs, community practices and viewpoints. The curriculum optimistically states that pupils learn to see things from the perspective of the life situations and circumstances of others. This ability to change one's perspective and to truly understand and empathize with the values and experiences of another is not necessarily inherent, but requires training. Furthermore, the curriculum assumes that language, culture, religion and worldview boundaries can be crossed in school education, provided that teaching is tailored to the interests and skill level appropriate to pupils' age. Without giving any specific examples how such crossing is possible, the curriculum says that learning together across various boundaries creates the conditions for genuine interaction and community. Thus, the curriculum appears to assume that when pupils from different cultural backgrounds gather in a classroom, they will automatically cross cultural boundaries. Even if this is true to some extent, one would expect the possibility of cultural conflicts to be considered as well, which is not the case in the Finnish curriculum. According to the curriculum, basic education education lays the foundation for global citizenship that respects human rights and encourages action for positive social changes. Thus, the Finnish curriculum has a highly positive outlook on the enrichment and cultural exchanges that education in schools can foster. According to the curriculum, pupils will learn first about the culture of their school community and home region in the past and present, as well as their cultural environment and changes and diversity within it. Second, pupils are said to have opportunities for international collaboration and the comparison of different cultures, customs and traditions. The curriculum concludes that cultural diversity is fundamentally a positive asset. The curriculum emphasizes that teaching promotes knowledge and understanding of cultures and ideologies, worldviews and religious traditions, such as Christianity and the tradition of Western humanism. In the same context, no other cultural, religious or philosophical tradition is mentioned. The curriculum also states that along with respect for life, other people and nature, the inviolability of human dignity, respect for human rights and the democratic values of Finnish society, such as fairness and equality, should be emphasized. Cooperation and responsibility, the promotion of health and well-being, the growth of good habits, and the promotion of sustainable development are viewed as the building blocks of civilization. These can be viewed as important and demanding goals in a globalizing world, confronted with climate change and other environmental and social problems. As a result, the curriculum approaches global issues from a solution-centered or solution-oriented perspective. The Finnish curriculum points out that pupils grow up in a world that is culturally, linguistically, religiously and ideologically diverse. Against this background, the curriculum says that cultural competence is necessary for living and working in a way that is culturally sustainable. Respect for human rights, interaction skills and the ability to express oneself and one's views are said to underpin such competence. Thus, the curriculum emphasizes proficiency in self-expression, including literacy and language skills, as an important dimension of cultural competence. Especially regarding grades 7 to 9, or the upper level of comprehensive school, that is students in the age bracket of from 13 to 15. The curriculum says that schoolwork aims to support the formation of students' cultural identity and a culturally sustainable lifestyle based on respect for human rights. As stated, students are guided to see cultural diversity as a fundamentally positive asset. At the same time, they are guided to recognize how cultures, religions and worldviews affect society and daily life, and to consider what actions are unacceptable on the basis that they violate human rights. This last, easily unnoticed remark is significant because it implies that the importance of critically evaluating cultural beliefs and practices Thus, cultural diversity and respect are not interpreted as justification for thinking that anything goes. According to the curriculum, school systematically promotes respect and trust towards other nationalities and people groups. Moreover, pupils need to become acquainted with the key human rights treaties and their interpretation and implementation. Thus, both practical and theoretical knowledge of human rights are emphasized in the Finnish core curriculum. Despite this emphasis, the curriculum fails to address the complex issue of how cultural recognition and cultural criticism may conflict. Accordingly, it fails to address the challenge of dealing with cultural differences when those differences are related to ethical values and inalienable rights. Due to the lack of time, I will not discuss the curricula of individual school subjects, even though they were interesting and important. Instead, I will concentrate on broad observations regarding the fundamental principles of the Finnish curriculum. Therefore, I next expand on the study's findings, focusing on the ethical implications of the curriculum's key elements. However, one observation from various school subjects deserves to be mentioned here. Globalization and cultural diversity are significantly more prominent in the curricula of languages, religion and life stance education than in the curricula of other school subjects in Finland. As indicated previously, the curriculum places considerably greater emphasis on cultural diversity than on globalization. There can be several reasons for this, including culture being a more commonly used and well-known term than globalization. Furthermore, from the school children's point of view, cultural differences and similarities may be more visible and tangible than the effects of globalization on economic and social development. Notwithstanding, it is certain that globalization has altered the way education programs are delivered, with an increased emphasis on the importance of learning about and appreciating different cultures. Cultural and socio-psychological aspects of globalization receive the most attention in the Finnish curriculum, as evidenced by the fact that cultural diversity is discussed in all curriculum sections. As stated, the economic aspect of globalization is most prominent when discussing work and professions. The curriculum emphasizes how technological progress and economic globalization are altering work and employment. Therefore, the curriculum requires pupils to acquire general social and communication skills in order to cultivate their capabilities for work and economic life. As a result, the curriculum takes a highly instrumental approach to globalization. The Finnish core curriculum takes for granted that pupils grow up in a culturally, linguistically, religiously and ideologically diverse world. Against this backdrop, the curriculum states that cultural competence is necessary for culturally sustainable living and working. Respect for human rights, interpersonal skills and the ability to express oneself and one's opinions are said to be prerequisites for such competence. The curriculum emphasizes expressive capacity as an important dimension of cultural competence, including language proficiency and argumentation skills. More broadly, the curriculum paints a rosy picture of education as something that encourages students to become active participants in their culture and community, and also promotes an interest in other cultures. In this regard, the curriculum could be blamed for encouraging dreaming, while failing to provide adequate guidance on how to make those dreams a reality. The emphasis on the need for students to develop a coherent identity and healthy self-esteem in a multicultural setting is part of the normative educational goals provided by the Finnish curriculum. Although the curriculum makes no mention of it, in a multicultural environment, representatives of minorities may face harmonizing pressure from the dominant culture, while representatives of the majority may perceive new cultural currents as a threat to their traditions and values. Nevertheless, one might think that when globalization and cultural diversity are discussed, the curriculum does an adequate job of focusing on the pupils' points of view and personal growth. On the other hand, as a result of this emphasis on internal development, the external effects of globalization and critical discussion of them are underrepresented in the Finnish curriculum. Furthermore, the globalization induced barriers to pupils' personal development, such as harmonizing pressure, remain unaddressed. As a result, the concept of globalization is presented rather thinly in the Finnish curriculum, and the concept is not challenged, let alone problematized. As indication of this thinness, social issues such as widening income disparities and persistent gender inequalities, which are frequently supported by traditional paternalistic values, as well as issues of cultural homogenization and assimilation, go unaddressed. Rather than delving into these issues, globalization is accepted as a fact to which societies must adapt because they have no choice. In the curriculum, the positive aspects of globalization are highlighted, such as the spread of cultural influences, increased intercultural communication, and opportunities to meet people from different cultures. The curriculum keeps silent about the violent aspects of globalization, in which one culture's traditions, practices, and customs are gradually and inadvertently replaced by those of another. This gives the impression that globalization and cultural diversity are primarily viewed from a utilitarian standpoint in the Finnish curriculum. Eventually, the benefits of globalization are emphasized, while the problems and disadvantages are downplayed. From an ethical standpoint, this is significant shortcoming because providing a one-sided, if not misrepresentative view of globalization does not foster development of students into responsible, honest, and critical citizens and consumers. A similar issue impedes the discussion of different cultural traditions and their potential drawbacks. Yet, culture can be a barrier to progress in a variety of spheres, including social advancement and ethical advancement. In the Finnish curriculum, there is no discussion of the difference between ethics as universal moral principles, independent from social and cultural contingencies, and cultural habits such as cuisines, greeting styles, and ways of dressing. Rather, the fact of cultural pluralism is accepted as a given, with no discussion of various dimensions or potential problems and solutions related to cultural pluralism. As stated, in the Finnish national curriculum, there is little discussion of the possibility of and need for the global ethics, such as a duty ethics with universal rules that would connect all people, regardless of origin. Despite the lack of explicit discussion on various ethical frameworks, the UN Declaration of Human Rights appears several times in the Finnish core curriculum. Hence, the curriculum makes an implicit assumption of global ethics in the form of universal human rights. This demonstrates that the curriculum, at least indirectly, assumes that the main point of ethics is to provide rules that are right and good for everyone, regardless of where they come from. When this result is combined with the obvious utilitarian emphasis in the curriculum's ethical considerations, the result is an ethical understanding that emphasizes the maximization of economic and other benefits related to globalization, and the minimization of social harms, so that as many people as possible, if not all people, can feel that their basic rights have been respected. This represents a kind of mixed model of ethics, in which utilitarian considerations are emphasized but refined with duty ethical considerations arising from universal human rights. One could see this model as representing a kind of rule consequentialism. In moral philosophy, rule consequentialism refers to the ethical view that the rightness or wrongness of an action depends not on the overall goodness or badness of its consequences, as act consequentialists believe, but on whether the action conforms to the set of moral rules that would have the best outcomes if everyone accepted and followed them. Universal human rights appear to be viewed as such a set of rules in the Finnish core curriculum. Furthermore, globalization and cultural diversity are framed as competitive advantages in the Finnish curriculum. This may be partly due to international evaluation frames like PISA and related country comparisons. Even though competition between pupils, companies, countries, cultures, or any other agents is not explicitly mentioned in the curriculum, the discussion of cultural diversity and how to respond to it is framed as something that requires the appropriate responses to support and strengthen social cohesion and goodwill, as well as to make pupils better equipped for international job markets. When people try to comprehend the problems and issues that come with globalization and cultural diversity, they often concentrate on potential or assumed conflicts between cultures and the barriers, if not walls, that separate them. The Finnish comprehensive school curriculum takes a different approach. It does not look at globalization and cultural diversity through the lens of conflict or barriers. Instead, it regards globalization and cultural diversity as facts that, for those who are well prepared and competent, can provide great opportunities on job markets and in other facets of life. Despite its generally positive attitude towards globalization and cultural diversity, the Finnish comprehensive school curriculum reflects the concept of cultural barriers through a contraposition with two underlying assumptions. First, cultures diverge in many ways, including beliefs, values, customs, and languages. And second, proficiency in cultural diversity requires good language and communication skills. By emphasizing proficiency in cultural diversity, the Finnish curriculum evades discussion on cultural conflicts and barriers. However, there are numerous historical and present examples of various nations and culture clashing, if not fighting with one another. The issue of how to avoid cultural conflicts is perhaps more relevant today than ever before. According to one view, cultural conflicts can be prevented first by blending, reinterpreting and harmonizing cultural norms, and second, by appropriately limiting and confining the extent of competing norms. For example, by restricting the manifestations of cultural identity to private life only. As a result, blending, or one might say globalization, and restriction, one might call it ghettoization, can be seen as the main routes to a harmonious cohabitation of culture, a goal that is also pursued in school education. In fact, both of these two routes, blending and restricting cultural manifestations, can be identified in the Finnish curriculum. The positive interest in cultural diversity exemplifies the blending route, whereas the restricting route is exemplified by principles and norms such as human rights must not be violated, and in religious education, pupils must be streamed according to their affiliation. The Finnish core curriculum points out various actions to be taken in order to teach and civilize pupils while maintaining a positive attitude toward cultural diversity. Hence, the curriculum directs educators to instruct and inspire their students in ethical and culturally sensitive ways in relation to cultural diversity. As a result, teachers may view pupils as objects to be directed, if not manipulated, in order for them to achieve the intended learning outcomes, including specific attitudes such as tolerance and respect for themselves and others. Even if teachers can thus be accused of paternalism, that is, being controlling and manipulative, one might wonder what else they should do besides help their students meet the learning objectives of the curriculum. According to a popular reply, teachers should emphasize active student participation in the learning process and not overlook the paternalistic tendencies of the curriculum. Even though these considerations may sound meaningful, it is important to remember that there are different ideas about paternalism. For example, one might call a curriculum paternalistic if it does not address what teachers can learn from students and what teachers can teach teachers. In this regard, the Finnish core curriculum is at least softly paternalistic. Perhaps the most important lesson of this discussion on paternalism is that educators should value and respect diversity in the classroom. This is not to say that teachers should avoid discussing topics on which pupils or their families may have different opinions. Teaching should be able to combine openness and directness, even when discussing contentious issues, with respect for other people's ideas and opinions. This requires teachers with nerve and empathy, as well as families who have faith in teachers' willingness to meet their children benevolently as individuals. Okay, finally, I try to sum up the main points. In my presentation, I have investigated and analyzed how globalization and cultural diversity are addressed in the Finnish national curriculum for comprehensive school. The curriculum optimistically assumes that education can strengthen creativity and respect for cultural diversity, promote interaction within and between cultures, and create the basis for culturally sustainable development. Given these ideas, the curriculum strongly supports the popular goal of social and cultural sustainability, but without explicitly distinguishing between different aspects of sustainability. Furthermore, the learning objectives related to globalization and cultural diversity are vague in the Finnish natural curriculum, and the curriculum does not propose ways of achieving those goals in practice and in different situations. Furthermore, the curriculum assumes that boundaries between languages, cultures, religions and worldviews can be crossed in schools and classrooms, without giving much thought to whether this is a realistic expectation, and under what conditions this can be achieved. So, to the best of my knowledge, this is the first comprehensive examination of how the Finnish core curriculum addresses issues of globalization and cultural diversity. Of course, I may be wrong. There may be, for example, some students who have done their master's thesis in globalization found in the Finnish core curriculum, but I'm not aware of that kind of works. Insofar as I know, there is at least no monographs on this topic. But anyway, I have concentrated on the findings of desk research, which obviously have its limitations. An empirical study of the implementation of the Finnish core curriculum would essentially broaden the perspective of how globalization and cultural diversity are addressed in schools and classrooms. As a result, classroom observations and interviews with teachers and students could contribute new and interesting information in a future study. Okay, that was all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Lehtonen. And it is so important to get his perspective. He is from Finland. He has studied in Finland. His children have gone to school in Finland. And on top of everything, he's philosopher, academicians, doing such a great job on this issue. I would open up, if you have any question for Tommy, Professor Lehtinen, and I see Don Habibi is already
Yes,
excited to get some done.
I have a question, yes. Thank you, Tony. Very good, very interesting.
Thanks.
And one thing I think I should point out to everybody here, because I don't know how many people are aware of it, but the Americans kind of look up to Finland as a model country with, you know, like, why can't our education system be like Finland's? And, you know, the kids learn multi-languages, they're, by the time, you know, they're so good at math, they're way ahead of us. So here's my question. Within the Finnish world, is there pushback against globalization? Because when I also think of, say, I'm American, so it's my good fortune that everyone kind of learns American English. And so, you know, that spares me the trouble of having to learn all kinds of other languages. So good for me. But in Finland, you're sandwiched between the Swedes and the Russians. And of course, the effects of English on everything. Is there no pushback among the Finnish people that by pushing our children toward globalization, we'll lose our distinctive culture, we'll lose our Finnishness, we'll somehow change our identity into some unknown and assimilate into some other kind of greater culture? And is there not something lost in that process? So are the Finnish people all saying globalization, we're all for it, gung-ho, yes, or is there anybody saying, not so fast, we're going to lose our distinctiveness and what makes us great, what makes us such that the Americans look up to us?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your excellent question. But by the way, or first of all, perhaps people in United States and other countries should nowadays look more to our southern neighbor, namely Estonia, that has done excellent results in these recent PISA examinations, better than Finland. But seriously, yes. My answer is to your question is actually twofold. At a very general level, I would say that the Finnish mentality, of course this is a very drastic generalization, but still I would say that generally the Finnish mentality is very pragmatic. Also when it comes to globalization and how we should react to that, meaning that because Finland is so small country and nation, people are used to think that there are strong global currents against which we cannot do anything. And globalization, economic globalization, is one of those currents. Instead, what we should do, and probably also what other countries and nations should do, is try to get most of the benefits that globalization can offer to us. And usually this is framed in economic terms, from a very pragmatic, utilitarian, even money-centered point of view. But then another fact is that in Finland, as in many other, one might say that in all European countries, there is nowadays very strong nationalistic, even ultra right-wing political movements, some of which are channels through accepted parties, right-wing parties, but of course there are even minorities among them that are more radical. One might say that some of those movements are even illegal or criminal. And there are lots of people who in a way sympathize, even if they wouldn't like to say that they are politically right-wing minded. They still in a way sympathize the movements that say that globalization that appears or is represented by people pouring from other countries in the form of immigrants to Europe, among other European countries also to Finland. This kind of globalization that in a way means that nations and people are in a way mixed. That sort of globalization is considered to be very problematic, even something that people should even attack in a way. Now, fortunately, in Finland the situation has been still relatively peaceful in terms of these right-wing movements. But for example, in our western neighboring country, Sweden, that you mentioned, you may know that there has been very violent attacks against immigrants in certain big cities, like in the capital, Stockholm, and other big cities. And this is something that politicians in Finland try to avoid. And the way to avoid this kind of violence related to globalization and immigration is, in a way, to make some kind of, or in a way, try to include also those right-wing politically minded people in the governments, and in a way try to maintain some sort of inclusiveness in terms of political parties in Finland. But let's see how it goes.
Question is, for example, now on the power is political party from the right wing. Perhaps the next political election there will be the left wing, for example.
Yeah.
My question is, does a political party have strongly, directly and indirectly influence the curriculum? Because normally when a group of political party become the winner, and the winner normally take all.
Yeah.
Even the Ministry of Education, who have the authority of education.
Yeah, very
Yes,
good,
thank you.
important question. Yeah, in principle, the Ministry of Education and Cultural Matters, because she or he is leading the ministry. Basically, the ministry has great power. If the ministry is active and wants to develop the curriculum, basically he or she can start the process of renewing the Finnish core curriculum. But of course, that sort of process usually takes time, several years. So it may be the case that the new curriculum is not completed or is not ready before the next elections. And of course, a new minister again can have something to say. One might say that at a general level, even if the ministers, even if they have in their own field lots of power and influence, the curriculum processes or development of curricula at different levels of education, it's more like experts in education who make the main part of the work. So I would say that or so far it seems to be the case that the ministers or political currents have not so much influence the curriculum, at least not the present one. But you never know.